Very good morning, everyone. I take this opportunity to welcome all the participants and our guest speaker, Dr. Murli Palla, to the webinar on research in computational material science. We are still waiting for a few more participants to join, but as we have already crossed 11 o'clock, we are starting the webinar immediately. Our institution is Aurora's Technological and Research Institute, established in 1999. We have around 20 years of experience in academics, and our institution is established by Aurora's Educational Society, which has more than 30 years of experience in academics, having more than 24 institutions offering engineering programs, degree programs. We are offering polytechnic, management, computer applications, and several programs under the group. Now, we have in our institution BTech programs in 6 departments. We are offering computer science and engineering, mechanical, civil, EEE, IT, and ECE. And we have 7 departments, and humanities and sciences department is organizing this particular webinar. Our institution is accredited by NAAC with A grade very recently, and we are very proud to associate with Dr. Murli Palla, who has a very good profile, and he has been very active in research in computational material science. For his acceptance, I thank Murli Palla a lot for agreeing to be part of this webinar, and I thank all the participants for joining in this webinar. I hope these 2 hours of session that we are going to have from Murli Palla will be fruitful, and each one of us will learn something and take home, and it will be helpful for our research. So I thank all of you once again, and I request Dr. Ajay to speak a few words about the webinar.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I welcome all the participants on behalf of Department of Humanities and Applied Sciences. This webinar is basically an overview on computational material science. So, as we know, materials play an important role in the development of any technology. And now, presently, the composite materials are replacing the metals and alloys. So, with the aid of modern science and access to high computational resources, it is now becoming possible to design and develop new materials through the application of fundamental principles. So, the resource person for today's talk, Murli Palla, will give an overview of computational material science and will discuss the tools which can be used for further exploration. And it will also he will also focus on the theory of atomistic modeling and also open source tools that can be easily used and exploited to investigate many interesting problems. And he will also focus on the tips how to write a research paper and ways to approach research in computational material science. I really thank your acceptance, sir, and I welcome once again from the Department of Humanities and Applied Sciences on behalf of the college staff. Now I hand over to Vinay.
Good morning, one and all.
Sorry, to Anil. I hand over to Anil to give general instructions.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, all. I would like to share few guidelines for attending the webinar on research in computational material science. The participants can post any queries during or at the end of the session in the chat box. A polling question will be provided at the end of the session on COVID-19, which is mandatory for all the participants to answer. The assessment and feedback link will be provided to all the participants in the chat box at the end of the session, which is only available for 20 minutes. And it is mandatory for all the participants to submit the assessment and feedback form for generation of e-certificate. For any further correspondence, the participants can use the RCMS LARC group. For any other queries, you can mail to has@atri.edu.in and you can contact to 9100000972. Thank you. I request Vinay sir to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, one and all. It's my immense pleasure to introduce Dr. Murli Palla. Dr. Murli has done his MTech from IIT Madras in 2002 and PhD from IISc Bangalore in 2007. He is a member of professional bodies like Institute of Engineers India and Indian Society for Applied Mechanics. He was state 23rd rank in the ESET in Mechanical Engineering in 1996 and All India rank 3 in GATE 2000. He was a visiting research scholar for Brown University, USA, worked as scientist in Institute of High Performance Computing, Singapore. Presently, he is working as assistant professor in BITS Pilani, Rajasthan since 2013. To his credit, he has several publications in refereed international journals and one of his publications has more than 344 citations. He delivered contribution talks in several international conferences and also organized CSIR sponsored workshop on applications of advanced computational methods during March 2017. He also delivered a talk on parallel computing methods for high performance computing as a resource person. I welcome you, sir, for the webinar and request you to take over the session. Thank you. Sir, Murli sir. Over to you, Murli sir.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vinay, for introducing me, and thanks to all the organizers from Aurora's Technological and Research Institute. I would like to acknowledge all the people who have been. Since we already are late to the seminar, we'll directly jump into the topic. So this is the agenda for today's talk. Actually, I want to divide the presentation into two parts. The first half will be more informal and more like a general overview presentation, which will likely to stimulate some interest for the non-specialists into this area. And the second half will be really technical. Means like those who are not into serious study, they can take a break after the second half. That is up to you. These are the 2 points that I want to cover in today's talk. First, like why materials research? Means like what is so interesting thing in material science and what we learn in material science, and what are the happenings in the material science and how the paradigm of material science and engineering is shifting in the modern days. So materials development, if you look from the past to the present, like how things have been changing from empirical to the more first principle studies. So in this regard, the theory becomes more important, and to solve these theoretical problems, we have the great tool, the computational tool, which is becoming more and more popular today because of the advancement of the computers. It's like the more powerful computers that we are getting today are allowing us to solve the problems which were not otherwise possible in olden days. And after giving this overview, I would like to give some interesting problems which have been a part of, and then in the second part, I just want to share you some tools, the tools with which we work, like numerical tools basically. So I want to skip this introduction of myself. You can go through my profile here. Okay, so I just want to start the presentation here. This is summer and we see everywhere mangoes, and we see materials everywhere. It's like if you have to define material, everything is material. Everything what we see in nature is a material, right? Look at this tree. This is a material. The mangoes that are coming out from this tree is a material. But what was this tree before it grew so big? So all this material that has come out of this ground was underneath this. It was in some kind of molecules, atoms, right? So it was like there was some silicon, there was some carbon, there was some nitrogen. All these materials that are underneath, those things are there. But in olden days, like we didn't know that so many elements are present. Okay, So the way we thought about materials was something like this. So how this tree got birth? It's like there was earth here at the ground, and then we supply water to this tree. So the earth and water got mixed, and then there is some air. We knew that without air the plant cannot survive. So for this, all these things to get transformed, there is another element that is being added, that is air. And obviously there is sunlight. And then people also thought about a vacuum. So this is how we can visualize how elements have been developed. It's like earth, water, air, sunlight, that is energy, and vacuum. So people thought that all these there are some fundamental blocks which make all these things. All these things got mixed up and it has become a tree, and it has given to beautiful fruits like mangoes. And then all the animals that are living on the earth eat these plants, and then they get transformed. And each of these have different properties. So if you look at the earth, water, and all these elements individually, they have different properties. But when they combine into some different esoteric ways, you see completely different. So there is some kind of transformation that these materials are undergoing. And this is what people try to understand from the beginning. It's like how things are getting transformed from one form to another form. And as we progressed in science, we now discovered that there are not 5 elements, but there are more than 100 elements that are there, most fundamental. And we have whole periodic table. And again, these are a very few elements. Just like 100 elements is like very small in comparison to the materials that we see every day. So how are so many materials coming up because of this combination of these 100 different materials? That is something that is very interesting, right? So how this soil is getting transformed into tasty mangoes, and what makes them so different? If you look at the coal, it is made of carbon. Majorly it is carbon. And again, if you look at the diamond, it's again carbon. But what makes them so precious? So how atoms arranged in a different way, they become so precious, and atoms arranged in the other way can be so poor. Again, another example, look at the chalk piece. It's made of calcium, a calcium carbonate, mineral of calcium. Then again, if you look at our bones are again made of calcium and collagen, right? So these are fundamentally the same thing, yet they have very different properties. The material bone has, they say,
Murli sir, your voice is not audible.
We can change a monkey to a very sophisticated human being, right? So everything is there in the materials. It's like the atoms, molecules, elements arranged in one way, they give rise to certain set of properties, and arranged in the other way, they give rise to completely different properties. This is a very fundamental thing, that there is a paradigm of material science. Means like from this, like what we understand, what we try to do in material science is to understand the picture, like what are these basic building blocks of all these materials. In what way, if we arrange, we can achieve better properties in these materials, and how do we achieve them? These are the three questions. It's like what type of configuration and how to change these properties of different materials. Okay? So in this quest, from the ancient days, people have invented different varieties of materials. We have got polymers, we have got ceramics, we have got composites, and millions of materials have been discovered, right? Not millions. Roughly today, according to a reference by ASB, this picture is taken from ASB. Okay, ASB is a pioneer in this area. He studies materials from different perspectives, and he presents nice maps, property maps for all the materials. So according to his study, there are nearly some 35,000 new materials in the present age. Compared to some 200 years back, there are only some hundreds of materials. Hundreds. So many new materials have been discovered as we are progressing technologically. Okay? And also the constitution is also changing. It's like if you look at very olden days, this is the Stone Age. So during the Stone Age, it is mostly ceramics and wood, skins and fibers. These are used. So the polymers and such kind of materials were used. And there was a very little importance for the metals. Like only very few usage was there for materials. But in the mid 1900s, predominantly most of the engineering components are made of metals, and all other things have been very low. And as we are progressing again from 1960s to 20s, we're again seeing back to the olden days. It's like again the importance of the metals has been diminishing, and more we are seeing of polymers, composites, and ceramics. This is an interesting observation. So many man-made materials have been developed. There are semiconductors which make all the electronic gadgets, superconductors. Research is going on. If we achieve like room temperature superconductors, like we all know that it can make wonders. Graphene and related materials have been discovered. So many new materials have been developed. Semiconductors, superconductors, graphene, metallic glasses. Okay. Lightweight materials. Lightweight materials, like if you have to fly in aeroplane or flights, like the reduction in the weight directly translate to economy. Like because like the reduction in the weight reduces the fuel prices. And that directly translates into saving of fuel and saving of money. So strength is a very important property of material. And likewise, electrical resistance is like if you reduce electrical resistance, you can make less electrical dissipation, there will be less energy losses. And there are so many, means like hundreds of properties that are there, and we still continue to invent more and more new materials. Okay? For example, if you take this, how semiconductors have been developed from the olden days to today. The miniaturization is taking place. It's like everywhere. It's like our mobiles or computers, everything are decreasing in their sizes, and all that is possible because of the discovery of newer and newer materials. right? So that is the basic interest in material science. Now, from all this, what we understand is like the connection between the structure and the properties. So let us talk about another interesting example that happens in materials that we often study in our undergraduate courses. How processing affects the mechanical properties. So from age old, like blacksmiths have been using this technique. So what they do is like to increase the strength of a steel rod, means like in order to make the cutting tools more harder, they take this steel, heat it to a very high temperature, and then suddenly cool it. It's like they suddenly put it in a cold water, and in that process, they observe that the strength of the materials and hardness of this material has increased, and it can be used for cutting tools. So how did it happen? Like how this processing affects the strength of this material? Traditionally, this enhancement in the strength has been purely empirical. So what do you mean by empirical? Empirical means people did not really understand what is going on. Somebody simply observed that there is some kind of a story. I don't know whether it is true or not. People observed this quenching process when they tried to, in some Jews, like in some European community, people tried to kill people, and they used the slaves for hardening their steels, means like for hardening their swords. So what they did is they took the swords and heated it to very hot temperatures, and they used to stab into the slaves. And they believed that these slaves had some kind of mystical powers, and because of that their swords have been hardening. What was happening is these swords, very hot swords, are quenched because of the cold blood that is there in the human body, and such cruel measures are used. But nevertheless, like that is how things have been discovered, and to much later stage also people, like even today, many blacksmiths use this technique unknowingly. It's like they don't know what is happening at the fundamental level, but they nevertheless use this technique to harden the material. Okay. Even today, most of the engineering that happens in the materials community happens in the empirical manner. It's like we don't know exactly, for many of the things we don't know what exactly causes the thing. It's like how fatigue can be improved. People do a lot of experiments, and whenever the experiment clicks, we'll get a result. Something like coronavirus. Okay. Now we don't know what is fundamentally happening, how things are happening. People are trying like those chloroquine, this medicine, that medicine invented for a different disease. And they're trying to do all these kinds of things. So until we develop some kind of a basic understanding of the science behind any phenomena, even today all we can do is just rely on this experimental data. Okay? So the effort in the material science, which is like a paradigm shift, is to understand how all these processes in materials can be connected to their fundamental things. Like how this atomic arrangement can be manipulated in a way to affect their mechanical properties or any other properties. To achieve desired properties, how do we change this material? So to understand this is the usual paradigm we follow in material science. Okay. So we have at the core we have something called structure. All the material is made of some building blocks. And these building blocks are arranged in different manners. Okay, and this structural arrangement of these building blocks is a structure. And these different structures will give rise to different properties. Okay. Now this structure can be changed by the processing, okay, such as heat treatment. We have just seen an example. Okay, and this will lead to an improved performance. So this is our end goal. So we want to make materials which perform. We want to have materials which have a better performance. Okay? And this paradigm holds true in every aspect of our life. Example, take for example, making of chapati. They are very simple examples because great science lies in very simple examples. The chapati can be harder, it can be brittle, it can be ductile. Many people worry about how to make a very soft and nice chapati. Okay? So dosa, you can make it a very crispy, or you can make it like very chewable. So different kinds of dosas are available. So what we have in our mind is like how to get this performance. Okay? And people do research on how to make this chapati more softer. So what do? They add some water. They try to change. It's like they try to bring in more gluten into the wheat. So for that, like they add some hot water into this dough.
Somebody has written, please.
And do all such kind of things to make this chapati more softer and more desired. So we do. We have to try to understand like what type of processing will give rise to a better chapati. And at the end of the day, how do we tell that this is good or that is bad? So that part comes in the characterization. Okay. So you have to test the crispiness of the chapati, crispiness or the tenderness or whatever you call it. So you have some vague property in your mind and you have to quantify that property and you have to develop tools to measure that property and to tell whether it is likely, it is meeting the goals or not. Okay? So structure, characterization. So these are the parts that we have to understand how to make materials. It's like the whole thing is about making materials. So in order to make materials which have very interesting properties, you need to understand all this basic and fundamental stuff which we study from 11th, 12th classes and very basic stuff, right? So when we talk about the structure, okay, what level of structure are we talking about? So there is a structure at every different length scale. At a very small length scale, we have atoms. And atoms we have at the nucleus, at the core, we have these protons and neutrons and electrons in the shell. There are some still ambiguities, like what is the internal structure of these protons. It's like, again, these protons are having still further internal structure. The electrons, they have some quarks in them. So we don't go too deeply into that structure. So that structure is basically more interesting for physicists. It's like physics, like to understand like what is the structure of universe and all that thing. You have to dig deeper into this atomic level. Okay. Now at a slightly bigger length scale, we have these atoms, and these atoms are arranged in most of the times in some kind of a very nice patterns. Well, most of the time not arranged randomly, they are arranged in some perfect nice patterns. Okay, we'll see beautiful patterns which are regularly periodic, repeating, and those patterns have been classified. We have this crystal systems, FCC, BCC, and so on. So we have some structure there. Okay? And we also have atoms that are not arranged so nicely, but we have atoms which are like morely disorganized, means like mostly randomly, and we call these materials as amorphous. Now, these materials again can be in a liquid state, they can be in a gaseous state, they can be in a solids. Most of the times when we talk in materials, means like in engineering, we speak about solids. Okay? The solids, it's like in the atoms are arranged in random parts. We call them as glass, right? So different kinds of this structure will give rise to different properties. We know about this. Okay? How glasses have different properties. I mean, like if you look at the optical window glass, they are transparent. They do not have defects. Okay? So these glasses, incidentally, they are devoid of any defect. Okay? So when you talk about these nice patterns, we also have to talk about something called defect. Right? So what is the defect? It is some missing of some periodicity. So if you have like atoms arranged regularly, and suddenly you see that some atom is missing at this spot. Okay? There's no atom there. So you call that as a defect. It's a vacancy. So if you see several atoms missing on a line, okay, on a line or something, like we call it as a dislocation. And if you see some kind of a deviation from this periodicity across a two-dimensional manifold, then we call it as a 2D defect. That is grain boundaries, surfaces, all these are 2D defects. So several defects are there. And these defects do play a very important role in changing the properties of the material. For example, we know like why FCC materials are more ductile, why BCC materials are more brittle. Everything is because of this crystallinity. Okay? So what that occurs here at this pattern is a dislocation. So what is a dislocation? Dislocation is a line defect. Okay? Of all the defects that are present, they can be classified as zero-dimensional defects like point defects, line defects, surface defects, and volume defects. But of all these things, line defects are really important, and there's a big study, the whole subject of dislocation theory on these line defects, and they control the mechanical properties of these materials. These are aspects of crystals. Okay? Now, if you talk about glasses, because there is no periodicity in the first place in the glasses, we can't, we do not have anything like defect in our glass. We can't have a vacancy because we don't see any periodic pattern there. So it's very difficult to describe like what is the defect in our glasses. But still, the glasses also show different type of configurations and they have different properties. We'll speak about it a little later. And a little above than this crystalline structure, at a larger length scale, we see this microstructure. What is microstructure? These crystalline materials, the periodicity will not endlessly continue. It remains only up to certain region. Okay. Now, if you cross this region, then you will see another crystal in a different orientation and so on. And you see different phases. These phases are distributed at a length scale which is of the order of 10⁻⁻⁶ meters. That is micron. Okay, and hence we call this structure that is revealed at this length scale as a microstructure. And this kind of structure that is that you can see on materials can be viewed from an optical microscope. So materials can also be manipulated at this level to change their microstructure and to achieve desired properties. Okay? Now, at a much larger length scale, you have this macrostructure. where things are really big, means like you can visibly see with your naked eyes. Yes. So you have things at the millimeter, and you can also have things at the meter and kilometer ranges, right? So this is the whole gambit of structures at different length scales. And we have so many materials, and each material is manipulated at a different level, at a different length scale. And so many experimental tools are there to characterize this microstructure. Our interest in computational material science lies in all these length scales. So there are people who work at different length scales. At a very small length scale, if you have to understand what is happening here at the fundamental level, what physics should you use? We use quantum mechanics to describe material at this level. You have computational tools to solve these quantum mechanical equations and to predict things that are happening. Okay? And then we have molecular dynamics, atomistic simulations, Monte Carlo simulations to study things at a slightly larger length scales. And then we have phase field modeling, CalFAT, etc. tools to understand things at this length scale, microscopic structure. Okay? And at a much larger length scale, we do things by very regular routine tools that are FEM-based tools, ANSYS, Abacus, and so on. Okay? So what computational material science you are doing depends on what length scale you are studying. It's like at what length, what is the interest, like what is your interest, okay? And what is, it depends, depending on your background, you can pursue research in any of these areas. And before going to study, you first have to be clear with your fundamental concepts. This is what I described here. There are different tools at different length scales. To understand all of these things, you have to first dig to our basics. To engineers. So what they do is like they throw us an equation or a mathematical model. They are not interested beyond that. It's like there's once the mathematical model is given and it predicts sufficiently well of some systems, there their job ends. Now it is an engineer who takes these mathematical models and studies the behavior of systems at a much complex level. For example, a scientist invents an algorithm for addition. A mathematician or a scientist invents an algorithm for an addition. That's how to do or division. He's in giving out this algorithm. Okay? Now, how to do this division, like where to apply all these things, we have to, engineers have to take it forward and they have to use it in day-to-day life. Okay, that is what computational materials.
Sir, sorry to disturb you, sir. Again.
Yes.
Can you stop it and share it again, sir? Some people are facing blank screen.
Okay, I am now taking a break now.
Okay.
Like the first half part is over.
Okay.
So we will do that thing.
Okay, sir.
So this is the overview. Okay, so in order to do this computational material science, what we have to understand really is the basics of all these physical laws. Okay, so we'll look at some of these basic laws, and then we'll also look at how to translate them into a useful, predictable model. Okay? So before leaving for a break, 1 second, I just will reshare the screen as requested by Vinay Palla. Okay, we'll take a break in about 5 or 10 minutes. Before going for the break, I just want to show you some of my simulations. So this is from one of my work, which was highly cited. So here we investigate how metallic classes behave under a fracture. It's like when you have a crack in a metallic glass and load it on them, how the crack evolves in space. So there are two metallic classes. I just want to show you a simulation result. So this is a calculated result. It's like numerically, it's not from any experiment. It's like we do this experiment in a computer. So what we do is like we create some atoms, we define some interatomic forces, and then we load them, and we see how this fracture is happening. So this is one of the metallic class. It behaves like this, and under similar condition, we have another metallic class, okay, whose behavior is completely different. So what is happening? The first metallic class, it is a iron phosphorus system, and the second metallic class, iron system. Generally, if you have to wellness or ductility in materials, we appeal to the dislocation theory most of the times. So, right here, you have some stress concentration that will happen in behavior. The stresses near the crack tip will be very high based on the mechanics. So you can solve either theoretically or analytically. You can show that there is a stress concentration that is infinitely larger at the crack tip. Now, what happens if a material is brittle? It's like if a material is ductile, you have dislocations which can be easily moved. Like in ductile materials, what happens is you have dislocations, and these dislocations can move very easily, thus rendering the plastic deformation very easy. Once the material plastically deforms, this high stress concentration that is there near the crack tip will be mitigated. Lower stress concentration. At this stress, the decohesion of these bonds cannot happen. Okay? So before the bonds started disjoining or the bonds getting broken, these atoms move or shift from their places. It's like to happen, because of which the stresses keep on building at the crack tip, and then eventually the material will form a brittle fracture. Now, most of the times in this, in metals, people who are interested more into this research, let me tell you some more theory. The fracture in the ductile materials happen because of the voids in nuclei. high hydrostatics develop near the crack tip. These hydrostatics cause cavities to nucleate at this crack tip, and these cavities join with the adjoint things, and the fracture proceeds in this way. This is whole mechanism.
Sir,
All this theory is true for us.
sir, again.
But here what we're studying is amorphous, means like it's a metallic class. In the
Murli,
metallic
sir?
classes, we find that the situation is reversed. And like brittle material fracture mechanism, it happens more
Murli, sir?
because of cavity nucleation. So
Sorry
if you
to
see the
disturb you, sir.
fracture mechanism here, it happens
Hello,
because
sir?
of the cavities.
Hello, sir?
So you see some
Murli, sir?
cavity nucleating. And then these cavities get
Murli, sir?
joined with the
Sir, Murli, sir.
getting nucleated.
Hello?
And the fracture proceeds by void nucleation.
Dr.
and
Murali?
coalescence mechanism. And these void nucleation and coalescence.
Dr. Murali, you're able to hear us?
Local density fluctuations in this metallic class, and that is what we report in this particular paper. This is an interesting thing. So, this kind of model, anyone of you can do that.
Dr.
That
Murali,
is what I want to show, how to do these simulations in the second half of my webinar. We'll try to see how to model this kind of things. It's like how to. So this is basically done by molecular dynamics. That is a power of molecular dynamics. The second problem again done by me. Like this is the work of a PhD student.
Yes, sir.
Here we are looking at the fracture behavior
yeah.
of biocomposites, bio-inspired
Box is there in the
composites.
lab, sir. Please
So
post.
here the idea is to look at the microstructure of how bones
Okay, sir, I am
have
talking.
high
Sir,
fracture
it is there
toughness.
from the research
The
person,
bones
sir.
have this
I will just-
a mineral called hydroxyapatite. This is a mineral phase. This is a calcium phosphate mineral phase. This calcium phosphate mineral phase is embedded in a collagen matrix. The collagen, soft material. So in this simulation, what we are that we are doing, the red color region represents a collagen which has a very low elastic modulus. Okay, and the blue color region represents a mineral which has a very high Young's modulus and it is like rigid. Okay.
Sir, Murli, sir. Murli,
So
sir.
whenever you have a composite, you
Murli,
mix
sir.
materials which have complementary properties. So one is like very high.
Murli, sir.
very- Bones you need to have rigidity. If the bones are not rigid, the bones will become like a limp. It's like it just looks like a skin. It's like imagine like a man without bones. Like it simply limps. Right? So stiffness is an important thing, and but if the material becomes very stiff, then it becomes brittle. So it becomes like a very brittle, and material will fracture very easily. So here you need to have a material which has very high rigidity as well as high stiffness. So bones have cleverly constructed in such a way that they have these two properties. Now can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's loading. Yeah, yes.
Good afternoon. We will now discuss about like how to do the things, okay, in computational. So basically what we have here is we first have some physical law. Okay. It can be many things. It can be a Schrodinger's equation. It can be Newton's law. This or diffusion equation. physical model, we can describe it in some kind of a mathematical model. So what we have here is, from physical we get a mathematical equation. This job is generally done by physicists, and sometimes we as materials models also will invent new equations such as phase field equations. So there are so many modeling techniques and there are so many equations. Solving each of these equations, will be able to solve different varieties of problems that occur in the material science. The common equations that occur in material science are these equations: the diffusion, thermal, heat conductivity equation, and so on. So many equations are there. Elasticity. So how are all these equations described? They are all described in a form of differential equations. Many times these are cast in the form of differential equations. They can be ODEs, they can be PDEs. There is another very useful mathematical form also, that is called integral equations. Okay. Many mechanical engineers are use this one. They convert this differential equation form, that is written in a strong form, to a weak form, which demands less in terms of the number of derivatives, requirement of the derivatives. Okay. So you have another thing called weak form. So you have a differential equations, you have algebraic equations, and then you have integral differential equations. So many equations are there, but most of the times you have this differential and integral equations. Okay? Now, from these differential equations, you convert this equation into some numerical model. From physical comes a mathematical model, and then comes a numerical model.
Okay, sir.
Okay? So these equations are continuum equations. In order to solve them, you have to put it in a particular form in a computer, right? So we discretize these equations. So we convert all this different, like a computer cannot easily solve a boundary value problem just like that. No one can solve it. Like there are symbolic computations, but most of the times those are limited. And symbolic computations, the capabilities of symbolic computations are limited. So most of the engineering problems are basically solved by discretizing these equations. Okay, so what we do is, like, these differential and integral equations, we convert them into algebraic equations. Basically, we convert them into a very simple form, something like AX is equal to a set of linear equations. Second is use an open source.
రికార్డింగ్ దగ్గర మనం చదివి రికార్డింగ్ పెట్టిన పోతుంది రికార్డింగ్ అంటే
అదేం చేయకండి. రికార్డింగ్ ఎవరు చేస్తున్నారు? రికార్డింగ్
ఏం చేస్తాం మనం తెలియదు కదా సార్.
నేను అందులో చేయట్లేదు.
ఓకే, అవునా?
వేరే ఉంది, రికార్డ్ అవుతుంది
Hello.
ఆల్రెడీ.
Hello.
సార్.
Hello, Vinay.
యా ఇట్స్ ఓకే.
I'm hearing some disturbances from your side.
యా ఇట్స్ ఓకే, ఫైన్ నౌ.
మీరు మ్యూట్ చేయకుండా మాట్లాడండి.
Okay. So these are different options we have. Okay.
నీకు పెట్టా రికార్డింగ్ మీరు మళ్ళీ రికార్డ్
So if most of the times like these commercial softwares are used by industry
మీరు
people.
ఎందుకు మాట్లాడడానికి
ఇందాక అయిపోయింది సార్ వీడియో.
Okay.
అంటే stop-
So
stop
only
అయిపోయింది.
these can be used only when the problem is thoroughly understood and you just want to use it like a ready-made tool. Then you go for a commercial tool software. Okay. But in academia, we generally do these things.
పెడుతూనే అయిపోతుంది సార్.
Like we have to write either our own code, and there are some open source freely available softwares that are there that are available, and we have to learn them. Okay? So first we have to understand like what are the different things that are available, which are easy, which are difficult to learn, which have higher steeping curves. So let me just give you a brief overview. At a very basic level, I said already that we have something called density functional theory. This you use for band structure calculations and so on. Okay. At a larger length scale, we have something called molecular dynamics and Monte Carlo simulations. Monte Carlo simulations basically use some kind of a random numbers. Okay. We can investigate diffusion related phenomena, diffusion jumps and so on using these random numbers, and we can also predict some microstructural things using Monte Carlo simulations. So the advantage of this is like that you can simulate larger length scales here. And here this is limited by smaller length scales, but this is a very powerful tool. Okay, you can do things more exactly using molecular dynamics. Okay? At a bigger length scale, you have something called discrete dislocation dynamics, and you have phase field model. And then as you go to higher length scales, you have commercial softwares like ANSYS, Abacus, and so on. Okay, it's not that we don't have commercial softwares here also. At every place we have commercial softwares, but mostly these areas at the lower length scales are dominated by academics, and they are dominated by open source tools. Okay? So it is advisable for one to learn some open source tools and to write our own code for studying some problems. Okay, it gives a basic experience of like how things happen and how to study the things. Okay? For example, the simulation which I have shown you, the crack simulation, that can be completely be done by our own code. We don't have to rely on any other persons or any other resource, except that we may require like very high computational resource. That is one thing, but otherwise you can proceed with our own code. Okay? So now what I want to share with you is just two simple examples of how problems can be solved in this area. Okay, so it is impossible to cover all these areas. So I will select one particular area which is evolving, which has already seen like lot of things. It's like it is becoming more and more powerful. So we study about molecular dynamics. Okay. So molecular dynamics, if you want to do some simulations on molecular dynamics, you have two choices. Either you can write your own code, but then there are so many interatomic potentials and so much stuff there, like it is impossible for one person to sit and write the whole code for all the materials. But then luckily we have a very important open source software called LAMMPS. If you search in Google for this keyword, you will immediately get this software, LAMMPS. Okay? So you first see the very first thing that you get is LAMMPS, molecular dynamics simulator. And this is a very, very powerful molecular dynamics method. It is written by so many professional people, and it is really available for anyone to download and use it. This is the most easiest tool that one can learn in molecular dynamics. So today we will discuss a little bit about how to learn this software called LAMPS, and we'll also write our own code using C++, a similar capability of what we do, and we'll try to begin our study. Okay? So, where to start? The very first problem is the very easiest problem we can think about to understand all this jargon. Is just to model a simple harmonic oscillator. So you have a mass here, which is attached to a spring K, and when there's no force acting, let us say there is a equilibrium length L0 for this system. Okay? Now this mass has been pulled by a certain distance L. What will happen? So this system will, this mass keeps oscillating about this equilibrium position. So that is what we see. If you plot that equilibrium position, you'll see something like this. Okay. This is the simplest system, okay? Harmonic oscillator. Okay, if you understand this thing, you will understand the whole thing of molecular dynamics. Okay. Essentially, in molecular dynamics, we do the same job, but here the only difference is here there's only one mass and there's only one spring. But in molecular dynamics, we have n number of atoms. It's so many springs. So you have one atom here, one atom here, one atom here. You have different atoms, and then each of these atoms are connected by springs. So to understand all these phenomena, first you have to understand these two basic things. Okay? So later, if you want to graduate to other subjects, you can study. You can also try to solve diffusion equation, Cahn-Hilliard equation. So you can do this as exercises. Okay? So you take this diffusion equation and try to solve numerically and see like how you can predict different things from the diffusion equation. You can also do a numerical investigation of a Cahn-Hilliard equation, which is again differential equation. You can search in Google. Which describes the microstructure evolution in solids. Okay, so different equations are there. We'll start with the simple things. Okay? So what equation governs this first problem? The first problem is governed by the following equation. F is equal to ma. Very simple. Okay? So what is the force that is acting on the spring? That is minus kx, this is Hooke's law, is equal to m d square x divided by dt2. So we got a differential equation here. Now this differential equation we have to solve numerically. So what is the analytical solution for this equation? So always it is when we study the numerical modeling, we study some simple models, okay, and then the same principles will go into the more complicated problem. So here the equation is simple, you can easily solve it analytically, but then you can also have try to understand numerically how to solve this equation, because it has important implications in the molecular dynamics simulations. So you can recast this equation as d square x divided by dt2 is equal to minus k by mx. If you solve this equation, you will get x is equal to some c1 sine
kx k by mx.
You can put some necessary, some appropriate boundary conditions, and then for some appropriate boundary conditions, you can show that the solution is something like a sinusoidal function. So what is the time period of this whole thing? So we write it. So this equation the solution looks something like this. So we have something like a time period. So you can equate this key by t to this one. So you will get
hello. Hello.
So there are so many algorithms that can solve this equation. One of the most famous and equation is a velocity well. The reason I'm describing this particular problem is we use velocity Verlet algorithm to solve this problem. The same algorithm is used in any molecular dynamics, however sophisticated it is. Okay, so we have to first understand like this velocity Verlet algorithm. Okay, how that is done? It is a very simple thing. Okay, so you first write down from this equation. If you solve, we'll have x is equal to write on this one, p of t. So you can solve, you can get this by integrating this equation directly. Okay? If you integrate this equation, d square x by dt2, we'll get this directly this equation. Okay? Now, how acceleration can be calculated? Acceleration is nothing but force divided by m, and force is nothing but minus kx divided by m. Okay. So a of t is nothing but minus k by m x of t. So simple. So whenever you have a configuration of a position of the particular mass block, you can find what is the acceleration for this one. Yeah. Now this, if you see, like it resembles your familiar plus 2 equation, s is equal to ut plus half at square, but here you have to also add the initial position, that is what it is. If you if you just integrate the above equation, you get this solution. Now we'll write down another equation, v of t plus delta t. Due to the lack of time, I'm not going to very detail into all these numerical solutions, but then you can easily find out these things. These are the simplest equations. So this will be equal to v of t plus half, here we'll do some trick, a of t plus a of t plus delta t. Okay. So this thing is done for a better accuracy, and it is shown that this algorithm has a accuracy of the order of O delta t. It has a 4th order accuracy, and it's a numerically stable. There is a sense of velocity Verlet algorithm. So what to do is, like, you first take an equation, a standard equation, and search for the algorithm that is used for solving this equation and try to solve this equation. That will give you some experience on modeling. So I'll show you one simple example here. This one. Velocity, let's see. Most of the times I do the programming in Linux, but the presentation purpose I have done this since Windows. So we use Dev C++ is a very easily available C compiler for Windows. So this is the simplest thing. So how we write this code. Here is a class. We have these variables T, R, V and A. E stands for time, R stands for the position, V is for velocity, A is the acceleration. Dt is a time step, K and M are the stiffness and mass of the spring, and R0 is the initial position. These are our variables. Okay? So with this numerical model, what we can do is, like, if we know the position and velocity at a given instant, then we can predict like its complete future position and velocity at any given time. So that is the basic principle here. Okay? Given initial position and velocity of a particle, I can find the trajectory, the whole trajectory at any other given time. Okay. So we have this equation here, this equation here, and this equation. Okay. Exactly the same. It's exactly how I have written the page. I solve this equation. Okay. So first R at any given time step will be equal to R in the previous time step, V times delta t plus half A times delta t whole square. And then I have to take this previous acceleration here. Previous acceleration I will calculate. I will store it in a variable A. Before this step, for the very first step, I have already calculated the acceleration. And then I calculate velocity and then increment the t and continue it like that. Okay? So now one very important thing to note down here is like this simulation, if I run this one, and note the results, I get the following thing. Change this thing. Here, this is time. This is a picture of position versus time. If I want to plot position versus velocity, then I can write position velocity get this graph. That is a phase diagram, a familiar phase diagram for this simple harmonic oscillator. All right. So the same principle we use in solving the molecular dynamics. So I'll open another code here. So these two codes I will share it with you. Means like I'll share with the organizers and they can share it with you. Please be in contact with the organizers. So this is the main molecular dynamic program. So I have created this only for the purpose of illustration. Like this simple code, if you understand, like you can operate any molecular dynamic simulation code. First, you have to understand like what is going on. So this code will not be very efficient from the speed point of view, but it has all the necessary ingredients in it. Okay? So in molecular dynamics, like what you have some variables. Like let us first look at the variables here. Okay. I have defined a class and these are the variables. So we have x coordinates of all the atoms. This is a two-dimensional code. For simplicity purpose, I have written it in 2D. Y is a y coordinate of all the atoms. Vx is a x component of the velocity of all the atoms. Vy, ax is acceleration, ay is acceleration. Axp and ayp are the accelerations at the previous time step, and time t is initiated to 0, and dt is given as 0.005, and temperature, we give some temperature to the system. It is defined like this is a Lennard-Jones potential. So let us first discuss about what we are trying to do here, and let me talk about a few things about interatomic potential. So a very simple picture of a bond. Picture of an atomic bond. Goes like this. This is energy and this position. So what I'm plotting is like, let us say I have an atom here. You can think of this as some kind of an inert gas atom, helium. Okay. Now I place another atom at a certain distance r from the original atom. Okay. Now the energy of this couple, means like this pair, will depend on the positions of these two atoms. What happens if the atom becomes too close, and what happens if the atom goes too far? Okay. So when the atom comes too close, the electronic cloud starts overlapping. They like starts disobeying, like violating the Pauli's exclusion principle, and then they start repelling. So some kind of a repulsive interaction takes place when the two cores of the atoms meet. At that point, like the energy of the system will be rising too steeply like this. Like you cannot, it will be even more steep. Like I have to write, if you plot it, it will be exactly like this. So the more closer the atom, like the more the closer this atom comes near to this first atom, the energy becomes like very high. So you define this to be the radius of these atoms. So you start calling this as a radius of the atom. So the atoms basically touch each other at this particular point. As these atoms move a little bit further, they start attracting with each other. Okay. So the steepness will be minimized at this point. Then again energy starts increasing. So this part of the energy does not increase so steeply. Okay. This is very steep. Due to Pauli, and this part of the potential, this part of this energy well is called as a softer, and this is caused by the van der Waals attraction. So if you keep the atoms, any two atoms, it's like fully occupied atoms at a certain distance, they start attracting each other. But there is some kind of an attractive force between atoms because of the dipole moment that it gets created, and that is the van der Waals attraction. Okay? So in more complicated bonds also, similar type of thing happens. Let us say you take an ionic bond, then it won't be a van der Waals attraction, it will be more long range, like electrostatic attraction. So there are so many attractive forces that operate between two atoms. Okay? We're taking a very simplistic case of the van der Waals attraction. And this force, this kind of energy, it gives you the force between these two atoms. Okay? So the standard form of this interatomic potential is described something like this. So this is a potential. So this part describes this repulsive part, and this gives the attractive part of this interatomic potential. Alright. So in order to calculate the force, what we have to do, we have to write F is equal to minus gradient of this potential energy. So if you do that, we get Fx is equal to minus dou v by dou x, which is given by dv by dr times dou r by dou x. Because now this r, it can come in any direction. Like if you have to do that in 2 dimensions, this can be in any direction. But this potential is just plainly described in terms of the r. What is r? R is the distance between two atoms. Two atoms. Okay? So this will give you the force. So what will be this term? So you take the differential derivative of that. We'll have 4 epsilon to a little go here. 6. This is a dv by dr term. Now what is r? R is equal to square root of x square plus y square, where x and y are the coordinates between these two atoms. Okay? So let us take a system where the first atom is at a location which is given by x and y, and the second atom is located at a distance, at a point whose center of mass is located at x j and y j. Okay? What I want to do is I want to calculate the force on this atom. Force, let us call these atoms as A and B. Find force on atom A due to atom B. You have to find the force of these two atoms. How do you do? First you will calculate dv by dr term will be the same thing. Calculate what is the distance. That will be x minus xj whole square plus y minus yj whole square, square root of this, that is r. And if I do this dr by dx, I'll have x minus xj divided by r. Differentiating this. Okay? Now plugging back all these things, I'll get the force between these two atoms, and I'm ready to solve the problem. So the following steps are there. First, create atoms. Okay? You have to create an atoms in a lattice structure. For that, you can use this lattice vectors plus basis. You take two lattice vectors and multiply them n number of times, okay, in order to get the atomic positions. So it's like x, y coordinates. Now, the second part is to create velocities. So velocities generally we create using some random number generator. Okay? Where like velocity are thermally distributed, we simply take some random numbers and generate them. But this particular function assigns the velocities to the atoms randomly between minus 0.5 to 0.5. So this rand by r, it will have 0 to 1. Minus 0.5, if I do, I will get minus 0.5 to g plus 0.5. So what I do is, like, I first calculate the mean velocity in the x direction and mean kinetic energy, and in doing so I'll also first initiate all the accelerations in the same loop, the initial accelerations to 0. Okay. Then here again I'm just continuing the same thing. I'll calculate the average kinetic energy and I'll subtract these mean velocities from the velocities so that there won't be any net movement of the material. So the material will not simply start moving. And the amplitude is calculated in such a way that the desired temperature is achieved. Okay, so if you do this, we get the desired temperature, desired kinetic energy in the system. This is how we start the velocity. So we have initiated the atoms positions, and then we have initiated the velocities. Then we compute forces. Okay? So before computing the forces, we first make all these acceleration forces here. All in this particular simulation, we take mass is equal to 1. Whereas force will be then force will be equal to mass times acceleration, and force and acceleration are replaceable. Okay? So in this computation of forces, I am basically taking forces as accelerations. Okay? So in this formula of Lennard-Jones potential, in the general formula, I have sigma, epsilon as the two parameters. What else does sigma represent? Sigma represents the distance between the two atoms in their equilibrium separation. Okay? And epsilon represents the bond energy. Let me take a fresh page. If I have the potential like this is a energy depth. So this is described by epsilon. So if I increase epsilon, I'm making the material to be more stronger, have high elasticity and have high melting point, something like that. So this epsilon describes the bond energy, and the distance, this one approximately describes the sigma. It's not exactly sigma, it is sigma times 2 power 1 by 6. Well, like if you take the equation and minimize it, you will find that the minima occurs at a slightly larger distance than the sigma. So this is roughly 1.1225 times sigma. So at this point, the atoms are stable. Okay, so that should be when you are creating atomic positions, you have to create the atoms exactly at that locations. So I'm initiating all the accelerations to be 0. So first I found this dx and dj, dy. I and j are the indices of the two atoms. I'll describe about this periodic boundary conditions later. So I'll find this r square, and if r square is greater than a very small distance and if it is less than cutoff distance, we calculate the forces. So we'll keep some limits where I have to calculate the forces, because like if the r is smaller than this thing, then the energy can become infinity and forces also can become infinity. So accidentally, if the atoms start coming too close, then that will create some kind of a numerical instability in the system. And also you have something like r cutoff. maximum distance beyond which you neglect the forces between the two atoms. So we'll calculate the forces only between these two limits. Okay? So R cut is usually taken to 2.5 times the sigma, okay, which I might have defined somewhere in the beginning of the code. So R cut is taken here. Now I calculate these forces and find these accelerations. So accelerations have been calculated. So all you need to do is just these three calculations: how to find the forces and then integrate. Okay. So now I again apply this velocity Waverley algorithm, compute positions. So x is equal to v dt plus a half a dt square. Then this periodic boundary conditions will come. Then again velocities are calculated in the similar way as we have calculated in the previous harmonic oscillator problem. So this is how we calculate. So we first store the previous accelerations in different arrays and we compute the forces. We will get the fresh acceleration terms here. Then V will be updated by taking the average of the previous and the present accelerations and adding it to the initial velocity. So this is essentially V is equal to U plus 80, something like that. U plus 80, but acceleration is for better accuracy, we take the average of the two accelerations. That is what it is. And then we put the kinetic energy in this one. That's all. Yeah. So during the run, it keeps iterating. First we calculate positions, velocities, write the thermodynamic information, calculate kinetic energy and potential energy, and we run this. So this takes about 125 seconds or so. So this program plots the data that I'm getting here. As the simulation is running, I can see like how the atoms are moving. I couldn't do the full thing because simulation is not completed. So I have written the simulation for 10,000 time steps. In the meanwhile, we'll look at like how to run the same code from the lamps. This will be the last topic. So once you download the lamps, we'll have the following things. First, go to this examples directory. In this examples directory, you can go to the MIN. So this is the easiest example for you to try.
కనెక్ట్ అవ్వలేకపోతున్నాం అని చెప్పి ఎంతమంది
ఇప్పుడు పెట్టలేదు ఇప్పుడు పెట్టలేదు ఎవరు
లార్జ్లో జాయిన్ అవ్వలేకపోతున్నాం
ఈరోజు పొద్దు నుంచి 5-6 కాల్స్ వచ్చాయి
అంతే. సో ఏదో మనం దానివల్ల డిస్టర్బెన్స్ అనేది కాదు, అలా అనుకోవడం కూడా లేదు. సో 400 వస్తేనే రిజిస్టర్ చేసి పెట్టారు. సర్టిఫికెట్ల కోసం రిజిస్టర్ చేస్తున్నారు. రిజిస్టర్ చేసి సర్టిఫికెట్ ఇచ్చేస్తారు మనకి. రికార్డింగ్ ఫీచర్
once you download this LAMP software, you can go through different examples. And one of the example that we have written simulation is like with C++ closely corresponds to this particular example that is there in the min folder. So you can compare your simulation with this particular program. So how the code is written? Actually, it has a name called in.min. have renamed it for better visibility in my editor with ArcLMP. So in the LAMPS code, you have all these commands on the left hand side, and the parameters that go for the particular commands will be on the right hand side. Okay? So the commands will start with the hash mark. So, what you have to do is like you just have to create this file and then run this simulation using this command. Just give the name of the executable and give this file that you have created here as an input file for the things. Okay? If you run this code, like I have written the batch file and then I run this one, the code will run. Okay. So you have to understand like how to what's the meaning of different things. So if you go through the tutorial of the particular software, you can understand most of the things are easily readable. So the first one gives the units, system of units that are developed. Because Lennard-Jones is a non-dimensional system, we use Lennard-Jones atoms. Dimension we have restricted it to 2. Atom style we can have polymeric molecules, big molecules and all, but here we are using simple point-like atoms, so we use atomic. We have hexagonal lattice, and these commands are there to create lattice structure. We are creating velocity so that the final kinetic energy will be approximately 5. Then we specify their potential as Lennard-Jones. The advantage of different potentials. We have to go through that manual. But here, like we are doing exactly like what is there in the code. So we have chosen this Lennard-Jones potential. The integrator we use is called NVA, and we are just forcing this to do, and this does exactly the same thing on the same system which you have been using. Okay? So if there is another software you have to recommended software. Okay? So LAMPS, it does MD. It's on varieties of materials. Okay. Like silicon, polymers, cells, human, like biological cells, and you can do a lot of molecular dynamic simulations with LAMPS. It's a very useful tool. And but this is basically just solves the equation. Okay, now in order to visualize, you have to install another software. This is also open source. It's called OVITO. Okay. If you install that OVITO and keep, you will be able to see this atom configurations, atomic configurations. Yeah? Better way. Take open this one. So these radius is like arbitrary. Okay, you can choose whatever atom. It's like strictly speaking, the atoms are point-like objects. You tend to think of radius where the two atoms meet. That's all. That's all it is. Okay? If you do the same simulation at a higher temperature, you see the following type of thing that you have run. I would like to end my simulation here, presentation here. So let us run the same thing with the software which we have written. This is what this gives. Okay. Finally, the end result of molecular dynamics is like in order to see whether your simulation is equilibrating or not, you have to plot the potential energy as a function of time. Okay. If you see that these things are fluctuating about a mean value, that means like it is equilibrating. right? The potential energy, which was initially about minus 3.5, has become minus 1.5 because some of the potential energy has been gained by the kinetic energy. It has been converted into kinetic energy. The system is now stable at about minus 1.5 energy, because these energy units are in terms of epsilon of the Lennard-Jones potential. Okay, thank you. I would like to take some questions from the organizers if there is any further.
క్వశ్చన్స్ క్వశ్చన్స్ ఏం లేవు సార్, పంపించలేదు ఎవరు.
1-2 questions I'm అడిగింది కదా అడగండి.
Hello.
Yeah, 1 minute, sir. Sir, one question is from Josna.
Pardon?
One question is from Josna. That
Okay.
if sunlight is energy, does it have mass? If yes or no, why?
Light has momentum. Okay. It does not have mass, rest mass.
Okay. And the same person has asked one more question. Most of the research takes place with an end result, but sometimes we don't have one, like the discovery of Higgs boson. What about them?
Pardon? Most of the research has an end result.
End result
Sometimes, yeah.
doesn't have one, like the discovery of Higgs boson. What about them?
It is not like that. Most of the times in research, you will not have one answer. You will have multiple answers till it means like when something is in the research domain, people did not really concluded anything. Okay. For example, you take a long time back, you take Newton's laws. Okay. Newton's laws, people thought like that is correct. Later on, like scientists have proved that those things are, like there some more additions have to be incorporated in them. Relativity theory has come, quantum mechanics has come. If you look at even older days, like people thought like Earth was a flat in shape, and then people later found that Earth is round in shape.
Okay.
So things are never concluded that way.
Okay.
Like as science progresses, we keep understanding in a better and better form, but there's no conclusion for anything.
Sir, one more question, sir. From Pulluri Venugopal.
Yes.
Which metals can be used to make metal glasses? What is the difference between simple glass and metal glass?
Okay, that's a good question. Let me tell about something. See, normally what happens is like you take a material, like all the atoms are like this. Yeah? When you melt it, it becomes like liquid. It's like atoms becomes like more random because the separation distance between these two things becomes very high. Okay? You can actually do this simulation by using the same code that I have given you. Like what you do is you take a perfect FCC lattice and then you increase the temperature to a very high level and then again cool it back. Okay? Heat and cool. So what is expected when you cool it? Like when you heat it, obviously this becomes a liquid, and in the liquid state, this order state has become dismantled because like atoms become like more disordered.
Yes, liquid is dissolved.
Right? When you cool it back, again what happens is like the atoms, when they are when you compact them, they try to arrange in the periodic shape. It is like you take some marbles, which are randomly located on a table, and try to squeeze them together. Most likely you will find these marbles to be arranged in some kind of a very regular periodic pattern. Okay? So that is a natural state for it. Because most of the metallic atoms do not have any shape. Like for example, if you take a silicon carbide, silicon has some kind of a bonds. It's like it will have something like this.
Yeah.
Right? The bonds are not like isotropic.
Yes.
So it will form some kind of a tetrahedron.
Okay.
Okay. Now these things when they compacted together, they don't form a very regular lattice.
Okay.
Okay. But if the atoms has a intrinsic symmetry in it, like metallic atoms, which do not bond with neighboring atoms, they tend to form a crystallic pattern. Okay.
Okay.
But what happens, like for example, if you take a marbles with different sizes, okay, marbles which are all of different size, and then try to squeeze them, then these marbles will tend to form in a random disordered structure. Okay? So in order to make a metallic glass, what you do is, like, you take metal atoms. Metal, what is the definition of a metal? Metal is a material which has free electrons.
Free electrons.
Okay, free electrons, or it is conducting. Like its conductivity is mainly controlled by the free electrons that are there in the conduction band. Okay, so these will obviously bond together by a metallic bond, which is like a shared bond between like the lakhs of atoms, and they don't get bonded like one to one or one to each other. Okay, they are generally bonded to a gel kind of thing.
Okay.
Like there's a background gel and there's a atoms.
Okay.
Now these can be approximated to marbles, which are like symmetric. Now these things are in the usual condition, they tend to form crystalline materials. But if you somehow suppress that crystallization and make them into amorphous structure by alloying, okay, then you get metallic glass. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Now, one more question, sir. Which version of LAMP software is downloaded for Windows?
LAMPs, actually, every version you can download for Windows as well as Linux. For example, you go to this download page, you can easily see pre-built Linux executables. You have the ready-made Windows software that is available here.
Okay, sir. One more question, sir. What is
All the latest versions are available for
Okay.
Windows as well as Linux.
Okay, sir. What is the advantage of LAMP software over other softwares? Can we make applets using this software? Applets with this software?
Okay. See, applets generally people make for IT purposes. It's like that is for general purpose things we have to do. Here, LAMPs is generally used to solve some scientific problems. You don't have to create LAMPs itself. You can think it like an applet.
Okay.
It's a small application. Okay. So, why LAMPs? Okay, and what are the other competing softwares? The competing softwares is another thing called GROMACS. Okay, this is also open source. This is mainly used by biology people. Okay, this has advantages of modeling proteins and a lot of other varieties in a easier way. Okay? The advantage of LAMPs is it's a fastest program that is available. Okay, it is like very fast. It can run in parallel mode. And like, of course, all these programs can be run in parallel, but this is the fastest thing that you can do, and its learning curve is very less. It's like you can easy to learn for beginners.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Next, one more question is, how does the concept of kinetic Monte Carlo plays a role in computational material science nowadays?
Can you repeat the first part of the question? I could not hear it clearly.
How does the concept of kinetic Monte Carlo
Okay.
plays a role?
Okay. So I'll now explain the difference between KMC, that is kinetic Monte Carlo, and MD. Okay. This is a stochastic, and this is deterministic. So in kinetic Monte Carlo, what you do is like you take a lattice of atoms. I'll illustrate a very simple example like how to do different things using this one. Okay. So you have all atoms on one side. Let us say you are having of type A. And then all the atoms that are there on the right side will be of the type B, the A type and B type. Okay. Now you want to model the diffusion of this A type. I mean, like if you leave it like that, you know that these atoms will eventually go into this region and these atoms will eventually go into this region, right? So how do you model that? You will select a random pair of atoms, neighboring atoms, and you will generate a random number. And if that random number is, let us say you generate a random number between 0 and 1. Okay? We will calculate the probability of this jump based on the temperature. Okay? If the jump probability, I mean like you have some energy associated with this one. Let us say the case one means like if the exchange of these two atoms lowers the energy, then the jump will take place. Means like if the exchange of these two atoms lowers the energy, overall energy, then the jump definitely takes place. But if the exchange of these two atoms will increase in the energy, then the jump take place with the probability that is given by this form. So we will calculate the probability, jump probability. Okay. Now, if you generate a random number, and if the random number is from this random number, if it is higher than the probability, jump probability, then we will allow the jump to happen. And if it is lower than that, then we will not allow the jump to happen. This is how we model. And we simulate the things like diffusion. This is a very simplest model, MOTS model of the kinetic Monte Carlo. Okay? So the advanced, like this can be extended into a cellular automata. And you can have tools, like using this such kind of techniques. Also, we could able to model microstructures in materials. Okay, this is also a very interesting field. We have done some work on this one recently, that we can model microstructures that are developed in additive manufacturing, which is a attractive area recently. So many things you can do with this kinetic Monte Carlo. The advantage of this method over the molecular dynamics is, in molecular dynamics, one very important thing I forgot to tell you, the time step that is involved in molecular dynamics is very small. It's like it is about 1 femtosecond. Okay. So in a harmonic oscillator problem, if you go back to the harmonic oscillator, you have to have the delta t, the time step, less than the time period of the oscillation. Okay, that should be less than this number. Okay, so if the delta t is itself higher than the time period of the oscillation, then the simulations don't converge. So likewise, every atoms, like all the interatomic potentials, will have some kind of a natural frequency associated with them. With that comes
Sir, your voice is breaking. Sir? Hello, sir? Hello, sir?
molecular dynamic simulations, like if you run on a computer, so some of the simulations may take years to complete.
Okay. Okay.
అడగండి ఆయన వెయిట్ చేస్తారు కదా.
Sir, your voice is not coming, sir. Not audible. Hello? Murli sir? Murli sir?
That is the advantage of kinetic Monte Carlo. On the other hand, kinetic Monte Carlo really does not describe the whole picture like what we get in MD. You cannot, these problems are limited. Means like some problems like diffusion can be studied, but if I have to study a problem like fracture, means like load, applying load and all that thing, that may not be possible in KMC. Any other question?
No other questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sir, one question, one say. In between, your voice has got broken. Can you repeat this answer?
Hello.
Hello?
In between, my voice got
Broken,
Okay.
yes, sir.
So, what do you want to listen?
Just
Same
last,
question of
last,
like
last,
Quantic
about
Monte Carlo.
no,
Okay.
only just last one, that is about the molecular dynamics after that body problem, that spring system.
Okay. I just want to repeat this thing. KMC can simulate
వినిపిస్తుందా లేదా అని నేను అడగట్లేదు.
larger
మీరు
time scales,
స్టాప్ చేసేసి ఒక క్వశ్చన్ తీసుకోండి.
Okay, sir.
such as diffusion, but will not handle all classes of problems. MD main limitation it is limited by this time scale. So time related phenomena, time dependent phenomena cannot be modeled in MD, and length scales. Okay. The max means like simulating a nanometer steel wire. Big. So these are highly computational intensity.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
These are the things I wanted to tell you. Okay.
No more questions, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your nice presentation on the computational material science and the simulation part of it, and you have given the much more information about the open softwares, open source softwares like LAMPS, Orito, and others. And thank you very much, sir. Thank you one and all for attending this webinar.
Thank you.